r/askreddit. What is the most creepy, unexplained event that has happened in your life? Me, my boss, and a coworker were standing at a surface table measuring something when the quarter-ton table moved about 6 inches at one corner across the concrete floor with a loud screech like someone had grabbed it and moved it out of the way. We just looked at each other like, did that just happen? I don't believe in ghosts at all. However, I worked in a building with keypad locked doors. On video, at least 5 doors violently or moderately were thrown open in the same hallway seconds apart. There are cameras on both sides and neither show anyone there, and they are in an enclosed building that wouldn't have allowed wind to blow them open, plus the keypad. I 100% cannot explain what I saw, even today, but I ended up working nights in the building, alone, without ever seeing anything weird. I did on occasion get hair standing up on my neck, and feeling of being watched. When I was 12, I woke up in the middle of the night to loud breathing under my bed. Being 12 and into fantasy and science fiction books, I was convinced there was a demon or cryptid or something that was going to eat me. I finally decided to risk it and run up to my mom's room to sleep in her bed. I made it safely without being dragged under the bed, and I told her what happened. She was convinced I just had a nightmare. The next night, I heard it again, and since it was only like 9 at night, I called to my mom so she could hear it. She was like 10 feet away and could hear it clear as day. There was nothing under my bed. Over the next couple of months, I kept hearing it, although not nightly. It slowly started to sound more like purring than breathing. My brother came home from college and checked under my bed and made me lift my hands to double check that I wasn't playing a prank. We never found out what was breathing under my bed, although we suspect it might have been acoustics. Coworker of mine in a restaurant goes to take a poo, and while in there, he can clearly hear the sounds of the door just outside of the restroom that leads to our patio open and closed. As no one is supposed to be in the restaurant, we are only open for dinner service, he bolts up and no one is there. So he checks the security cams. He sees for himself walk into the bathroom. Then the screens go all white fuzz for a few minutes. Then the click back when he runs out. I saw the footage. That shit happened. Very eerie. I work for a funeral company. One afternoon I did a viewing for a man who was having his funeral the next day. Usually at the end of the day we put the bodies back in the fridge because we'd been really busy, and I was at a small branch. We only have a very small fridge and it was already full, so on the rare occasion, if they've been embalmed, we'll leave them in the chapel with the air conditioner cranked up because we have good security systems, and who wants to break into a funeral home anyway? So the next morning, I'm the first one in, and I walk into the chapel, and the man is out of his coffin, laying face down on the floor. Not sprawled, but perfectly neat. Like he'd floated up in his coffin, turned face down, and floated down to the ground. Obviously, I had a heart attack, and my first thought was someone had broken in and done this, or were staff members playing a prank. A very sackable prank, and I can't imagine any of our staff doing that for any reason. And what's more, we have security cameras and motion detectors and swipe cards so you can see who has come and gone, but there's nothing. According to security, no one came in or left in that night. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we don't have security cameras in the chapel. And if you're thinking the guy wasn't really dead, I'm not in a third world country. He was dead. He had been embalmed, and you don't tend to survive an embalming. So yeah, it was a massive investigation, and no one could explain how he ended up like that. It still gives me the creeps every time I go in there. About 10 years ago, I was sitting in my room and I heard my doorknob slowly turning. I thought it was my dad seeing if I was napping and trying to be quiet. I watched the doorknob turn and heard the springs and the mechanism squeaking, and then the sound of the latch slide off the metal plate as it was pushed open a bit, and I sat up to greet my dad and ask what he needed. I didn't see anyone, and then the door moved like it was pushed again and it opened more, only for me to clearly see my dad in the living room sitting on the couch. This was so significant to me that I wrote down the time and exactly what happened. I didn't keep a diary or anything like that, I just couldn't explain it. The door was shut all the way and latched properly, and the air kicking on or another door opening would have sucked the door shut as it had many times before. At the time, I was also seeing a shadow figure peer around my doorframe, about 6 feet tall, solid black. All of my family is like 5'7" or under and very white, and the side it peeked from was about 3 inches from the doorframe to the wall. No one could fit there, and it would just stare at me in my bed, leaning in and out of view. Late at night, 6 or 7 of us sitting around a campfire. My buddy's uncle talking us some bullshit Bigfoot story. We all say screw you, you liar. If he's out there, let's go find him. We all hopped in the truck and drove out to the woods he was talking about. We all left. Before cell phones, so we couldn't have called anyone or set anything up. It was all spur of the moment. 30 to 40 minute hike. We come to an opening at a lake. Woods to our left and behind us. The trail we came up to our right. After 10 to 15 minutes, we heard a giant slap on the water. It scared the hell out of us. It was a beaver across the lake. We heard some rustling from our left. Pretty close. We all jumped and started looking around. Then we heard something behind us moving towards us, so we started moving. The whole walk back, we could hear 2 somethings behind us off to the side a little. Every time we stopped, they stopped. We could hear a little crunch as it stopped. Whenever we stopped, little sticks and rocks would get tossed from behind us. I was in the back at one point and got hit with a stick. It wasn't anyone from our group throwing shit. I don't know what or who was out there, but no one from our group could have made the noises or thrown the sticks. I still wonder what the fuck happened that night. When I was 9 years old, me and my older sister were drawing when nobody else was at home, and suddenly we heard our piano/keyboard play upstairs. We listened and recognized the song. It was for Elise. Then me and my sister slowly went up the stairs. When we were in the half, it stopped for around 2 seconds, and then it started again. And right when we were about to go in the room, it stopped. There was nobody there. We even looked around and my sister noticed the keyboard was not even on. It was a physical switch. When my grandfather was dying of cancer, he kept asking if me or my brother had a son yet. We were in our mid-late teens, so the answer was hopefully no. He spoke to all of us in a room and told us a story. In the mid-30s, his son fell and cracked his skull. He held him while his wife drove them to the hospital. On the way, he said David opened his eyes and grabbed his arm and looked right at him. He said his mom has cancer in her liver. It can be fixed, but you have to tell the doctor when we get there. David died in the car before the hospital, and Granddad forgot about the warning till the funeral. Grandma went to the doctor. They found a tumor, removed half of her liver, and she survived. After a few years, my father was born, and then a pile of other kids. Without that warning, none of us would have existed. I'm a construction foreman and sometimes work late. I was walking around the construction site one evening making a list of things that needed to be done the next morning. It was dark, and I was the only person there. The crew had left a few hours before, and the entire construction site was fenced off. While I was making my list, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I ignored it for a moment and kept working. Then it sunk in. It was a fucking person staring at me from about 50 feet away. As I turned my head, this person slowly walked backwards out of my view towards the area where everyone parks. But it wasn't a normal walk. Almost seemed to float. Not really floating, but definitely not a normal walk with steps. So I hauled ass outside to confront them, and they were gone. Not a soul in sight for miles. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched the rest of the night.